Hello, and thank you for joining me to look through the Vogue pattern catalogue of 1957. And what will become clear as we romp through is the careful thought and planning they gave to their clothes at this time, starting from the foundation garments, which were a more complicated affair than you might think, with specific foundation garments recommended for specific styles of dresses, different outfits for different times of day and different occasions, tips on colour combinations that could work for different outfits with different accessories, what coloured makeup to wear, how they produce sewing patterns drawn line for line from the different Parisian couturiers. It's a magazine full of inspiration, and I hope that you'll join me for a romp through. The Vogue pattern book for 1957 concentrates on creating the right silhouette for clothes with the proper foundation garments and for the key colour trends of the season. And here we have a mother and daughter in a fine cotton lemon yellow seersucker fabric, and opposite an advertisement for a longer line bra and a high waist girdle to create the right silhouette for your clothes. You will feel just wonderful, the advertisement promises, be able to wear the most exacting fashion with casual confidence. And then through advertisements for fabric, we soon come to another advertisement for a bare back girdle, which of course reflects the fashion for strapless and backless dresses. The advertisement says that the cut of the front panels gently molds the figure, and the stretch back of softest satin elastic eliminates curling, digging bones, which makes you wonder about some of the other girdles, doesn't it? And we can see with these fabric advertisements, such as this one for no iron cottons, how in the 50s we start to see the invention of easy care fabrics, and more advertisements for fabrics, including one for witchcraft lace, and then a rather wonderful black cat advertising some printed cottons, followed by a black poodle and a black sheep, and some crease-resistant fabrics before we're onto the editorial. And this promises to concentrate on corsets as the foundation of all fashion. And a wild silk in true blue is recommended for a lovely dress with soft feminine lines and an elegant waist-length jacket worn over it. And the colours for spring it recommends are true blue, clover pinks, melon, spices and ginger, salad leaves and neutrals. So of course opposite we have this gorgeous true blue. And for neutrals on the left we have this very elegant suit which they recommend making up in a wool jersey, and then above a spring coat with a line, it says, as new as the season itself, buttoned at the back, the waistline, and then with the full skirt falling from an empire waistline. And then opposite we have what it describes as a dress of great feminine appeal and infinite charm, with a pretty gathered overskirt tied at the front, and with the bodice finished with a choir boy collar and a neat row of buttons. And then we have a cape worn over a dress, and it recommends that the cape come coat will add a dash of high fashion to the simplest wardrobe, with a dress underneath a slender sheath of studied understatement. And for the cape, the fabric recommended is a nubbly wool in a deep true blue, and then with a matching shade of blue used for the dress. In the fabric they recommend is Cumbrian pop sack. I'm not absolutely sure what that is. And then above we have the classic 50s shirtwaist dress, and indeed they describe it as an old loved style but taking on a new face and conforming to fashion dictates, with a peg top skirt and face framing collar. And then we have some specific fabrics recommended to tie into the colours and shades recommended for the season. So it begins goes with Stone and Spice for the neutrals with the warm spicy shades. And then, as we've already seen, the True Blue shades. And here these True Blue shades are even described as romantic shades to match your dreams. And here we have the lovely vision of the salad green shades that the Vogue pattern book recommends. And these are all in either wool or cotton or the hopsack weave. There's also a spun rayon dressmaking fabric. Now this is interesting. This is a chart to help you plan, and you can see how much planning went into achieving the right well-matched look. So down one side we have the colours recommended for spring: the True Blue, the salad greens, the copper and melons, the stone and the grey. And then over the top of the chart we have shoes, bag, gloves, hat, lips and nails and jewellery, so you can make sure that you have the absolute right accessories and indeed makeup to complement your chosen look for this spring of 1957. And I'm just going to read out one of those recommendations to give you an idea of how much thought and care might have gone into putting together an outfit. So for example, if you had chosen salad greens as your theme for spring, Vogue recommends shoes in dark olive, china blue or fudge brown, a bag in champagne, Loden green suede or fudge brown, gloves in champagne, white or stone, hat in true blue, china blue or coral, lips and nails all in coral or clear pink, and then jewellery should be gilt, white and blue stones or amber and pearls. And here we have a spread of ideas if you want to use grey as your main colour for the spring. And there are recommendations for dresses, suits and coats. And of course the shades might vary from, it says smoky pearl tones to deeper charcoal. And the dress on the left, which I think is especially pretty, they recommend making it up in a soft pearly grey and say it's an easy choice for daytime. Almost sleeveless, it has a delightful pin-tucked bodice and billows out gracefully into a wide skirt. Or as a complete contrast, there's an elegant one-piece dress for cooler days. The suit they recommend making in a grey near black, and then a coat which gives the line of the rounded shoulders that were so fashionable then, and a collar shaped in a lovely curve. And this coat, it says, travels superbly from town to country, and they've hinted that because she's carrying her little weekend bag. And then another very pretty classically 50s full skirted dress with 3/4 sleeves and front inverted pleats. And now we have copper shades which, as it describes, run the gamut of watermelon pinks to spice and ginger. And the copper dress on the left is actually a sheath dress with a gathered overskirt. I love the idea of those gathered overskirts from the 1950s. And it also recommends what accessories to wear with your burning bronze, as they call it. They recommend accessories from black to lettuce green. Next we have a slim dress worn with rather a wonderful hat, and then a very easy to make dress with a drawstring waist, and a very cute plaid pinafore dress that Vogue recommends wearing with a crisp blouse underneath. And then moving on to the next page, a suit with the very fashionable in the 50s, very flattering I think, shawl collar. And then look at this printed dress with its matching cocoon shaped cape. And actually the fabric recommended is a blackish tweed with copper accessories, or a copper tweed with black accessories. And then we come on to true blue, which Vogue says is seen everywhere this spring and summer, and it seems to be combined with a little bit of gold here too, with that rather wonderful golden yellow suit and dress. But the emphasis is on the true blue, and the high-waisted dress with the deep pleats that we see on the left also has a gently rounded shoulder line for that very soft and feminine look of this era. And then next to it is an easy to make sheath dress, and then next to that what's described as the prettiest dress in forget-me-not blue to wear on sunny days and made in cotton, or even perhaps for evenings, as illustrated here. It says a smudged blue and green taffeta, and by smudged I think they mean those very painted prints that you see on fabrics of this time. And moving on to the next page, we have this very elegant suit in raw silk, and perhaps too with a matching printed turban. And in fact, raw silk is recommended for both the fuller skirted and pencil skirted version of this little suit. And then on the right we have for parties, or in fact for bridesmaids, this very full skirted dress which they recommend sewing in a silk organdy. And then we have beige. Beige has never really appealed to me as a word. Sure, it could be more appealing if it was described as, I don't know, a dark cream biscuit. Anyway, beige, it says, warmer than cream, softer than brown, teeming with every accessory colour, and a wraparound coat begins the beige story, it says. The coat is in a beige, knobbled with white, shawl collared, and deep sleeves, can be worn pushed up. And then next to it is what they describe as a beautifully cut suit with lean elegance, and then a silk printed dress perhaps in stone and black. Next we have rather a statement dress with that giant bow at the back, and Vogue recommends making this in a printed silk organdy, laced and enormously sashed, it says, with contrasting taffeta. You might also make the bodice only in lace, with an overskirt in taffeta and sash to match, in a sophisticated beige. Not convinced I would make that design in beige. If you're going to go that elaborate, you'd want to make a statement, wouldn't you? And I'm just not absolutely convinced that beige is the colour to make a statement in, but I could be wrong. Now, I do like the design next to it, what they call the shirt blouse with scissor cut folds. Look at that bodice. I think those scissor cut folds, top stitch for novelty, it says, worn with a pleated skirt. I think that's rather fabulous. And then lastly we have a short sleeve dress with a little crop jacket worn over it, and they recommend making that in a silk twill in darkish beige, and wearing with it natural pearl toned or salad green accessories, like her little hat is salad green, and her shoes. It's rather wonderful, isn't it? And here we are, more beige, different shades of beige. Here we have, it says, a wonderful neutral ranging from dry sand, not wet sand, dry sand, through to subtle rosier tones. And look at the dress on the right being so elegantly modelled by the lady standing at the bar. And this dress is described as right in step with Paris fashion. A late day dress, marvellous for cocktails, with its subtly draped back yoke and soft peg top skirt. It needs a supple though firm fabric, it says, and they chose a pale stone pure silk. And here we have a spread showing how you can make all 6 of these dresses from one dress pattern. That was what was so good too about these vintage dress patterns, as they often offer so many options. So we've got version A, high necked with long slim sleeves and a smooth skirt, for which Vogue chose flaxen yellow jersey, adding a darker leather belt. And then on to B, they made this late day dress in true blue rayon and wool to achieve an empire look, threading a jade ribbon through the bodice and accenting it with gilt and pearl jewellery and ruched white gloves. I've just noted it goes A, B, E, D, C, F. Strange. Anyway, let's move on to E, which is a stone beige wool crepe, perfect as an afternoon dress with its wide neckline and softly gathered skirt. And they recommend accessorising the beige wool with cream gloves and gilt jewellery. And then we're on to D, which is on the lower left, and they recommend a light true blue for this dress, but worn with a delicate pink straw pillbox. And then in this dress with its overskirt tied around it, it recommends a cotton satin in watermelon pink for the summery version of the pattern. And then lastly, a party dress made in two fabrics, a white heavy satin for the sleeveless top and a billowing net in midnight blue for the wide gathered skirt. And there's also a pretty cummerbund, it says, in champagne satin. And here we are for those wanting to sew their own bridal gown, and Vogue recommends, what do you think, witchcraft lace. You just happened to be paying for an advertisement with them earlier in the magazine. Wonder if that's a coincidence. Simple and demure as a bride should be, Vogue says. They wouldn't be saying things like that now, would they? No. And here we have ideas for your trousseau. And we have little fitted jacket with a slim skirt to make a happy twosome for motoring or walking. I love that word motoring, don't you? It sounds so much more romantic and civilised than driving. Driving to me conjures up traffic jams, long motorway trips, but motoring conjures up chugging along on pretty country roads, doesn't it? Or is it just me? And opposite, we have a house gown worn by this model. That's quite something, isn't it? It's a house gown for early morning glamour. Associate early mornings with glamour. I'm ashamed to say I don't really, but perhaps I could and should. And then next to the house gown, a trim little suit, it says, of simple charm. She's awfully slim, isn't she? Gosh. And these beautiful dresses, they do make me think of Audrey Hepburn. She wore dresses like this, didn't she? So pretty. I especially love the stripy one. I do think that is rather wonderful. It describes itself as a simple shirt-weight dress with a full gathered skirt and shallow patch pockets. And what's wonderful about these patterns is a lot of them include optional detachable pieces. For example, that dress we see the model wearing on the right with a square neckline has an optional dicky included with the pattern. And here we have a description of what Vogue pattern enthusiasts just love to get their hands on, and it's what Vogue calls the Vogue Paris original model. And it says Vogue is present at the exciting openings of the famous collections of all the major designers. Choose the designs that will become patterns, and each one is cut line for line, including all the construction and fine detailing for which the French couturiers are famous, so that women everywhere can sew their original model right out of the Paris collections. And they say they include their clear step-by-step instructions so that no detail, however fine, is overlooked in the construction of a perfect copy of the original model. And here Vogue is introducing the designer grey for the first time. I especially love the dress and the suit on the right. The dress has a butterfly tie under the bust which emphasises the empire line, and the jacket has those very elegant double row of neat buttons. And here we have more dress patterns constructed following the designs from those famous famous Paris couturiers. In this case, Lanvin, Castillo, Griffith and Petit are all featured in these rather glorious garments that you can then buy the patterns and sew them yourself so that you have your own designer garment. And here we have what Mrs. Exeter, an influencer obviously before the word really came to be, of her time, and it says these day dresses are Mrs. Exeter's answer to what to wear from lunch through to tea, chosen with her most tasteful eye and worn with her flair for elegance, which is so often the envy of younger women. These 2 daytime wool dresses are designed to flatter all her needs. A touch of light colour is provided by 2 eye-catching hats and impeccable accessories. These complement her choice of fabric for the dresses and round off the distinctive line of dressing for which Mrs. Exeter is so well known and admired. And now we're on to the city look, basic ideas for the girl about town. The city look is an elegant look, it says. Lovely clothes are a starting point, and you needn't look further than this page, but even the prettiest clothes need a follow-through. Good grooming and a shining neatness give polish to your appearance. A well-placed brooch or a luscious hat can transform a simple outfit. Flowers pinned to a lapel are romantic and feminine. Hats are coming up in prettiest ever shapes. All this flattery around. Beware, though, too many finishing touches can finish a dress, so go fairly slow on the faldalals. Faldalals? I think that's how you pronounce it. Do you correct me if I got that wrong? Faldalals? It sounds a bit odd when I say it. Anyway, there's a fine line too, it says, between day and late day. Sandals, jewelled glasses, bare necklines and dangly earrings are divine in their place. Their place is not here. And the coat on the left in the main picture and the dress opposite it are from the same pattern, and I think they are very pretty. It has a high-waisted silhouette, it says, and it advises making perhaps both dress and coat in coordinating fabric, and advises to wear pearls at the neck or perhaps a chunky gilt bracelet. And then you have your elegant suit, for which it advises a true blue tweed, and of course your accessories. And after your city look, of course, the country look, which is, it says, a more casual look. Well, that's probably true, isn't it? Thinking of myself. Clothes which are appropriate for tramping the fields, dashing down to the village, or standing around as a point to point. Not sure about that bit. Won't do for walking down Bond Street and contrariwise. The country has its own fashion standards, based mainly on the well-established classics. A tweed suit, a wool dress, those perennial good sports, a jersey and a skirt, makeup and jewellery at a minimum, hairdo not too elaborate, but not too windswept either. That's probably where I go wrong. Nothing sleek or shiny in the way of accessories, but there's lots of variations on the classic theme. Plenty of room for the imagination. Think of new ways to wear a scarf, a woolly one done up like a hood perhaps, of handsome bags and gloves, fabrics running the gamut of a game bird colours. No, you wouldn't want to get shot, would you? Anyway, yes, fabrics running the gamut of game bird colours. Pick a shirt in a colour to match your eyes. That would be sludge green then in my case. A beautifully simple dress on the right, perfect for lunch parties, church on Sunday, or country cocktails. It would be nice in oatmeal wool with gold jewellery, but not too much. And an endlessly useful coat would be practical in a camel hair fabric, perhaps lined with tartan, and a detachable hood should keep your ears nice and insulated against any cold winds that are whistling around this spring. And a pretty blouse that would would make up well in Viola. And then 20 tips for good grooming. I'll just read out the entertaining bits. I love this bit. If your hair is the kind that looks endy and discouraged between perms, because I think my hair can look endy and discouraged. Oh, particularly in damp weather. Is my hair looks particularly discouraged in damp weather. It just recommends a pair of curling tongs. Now this is an interesting one. Keep a soft chiffon square for helping you to get into your clothes without powder smudges and lipstick smears. All models do it. Just put the scarf over your face. Take the top 2 corners and tie loosely around your neck. It's the work of a moment and means you can make up before starting to dress. Oh, here's one for me as well. Grubby hands. Well, I'm afraid I'm always throwing things for the dog. Grubby hands are a death knell to glamour, but scrubbed red hands are only a very slight improvement. There's no need for either now. There are wonderful barrier creams on the market. I think I'd better buy some. And then for elbows, I didn't really think about my elbows. Perhaps I should. Rub the elbows with lemon halves. Having used the juice economically for something else, yes, I like that idea. As lemon juice has a tendency to dry the skin as well as bleach it, then follow this with your favourite skin food. And this is apparently because your elbows can become a little discoloured over winter. I'll have a look at mine in a moment. And here we come to beautiful beginnings, how to cheat the tape measure. The size of the pattern you buy, it says, has little to do with the attractiveness of your figure. It is perfectly possible for a 12 to look less trim than a well-proportioned 18. The vital things are proportioned and a smooth look. Bumps and bulges are what rob nice clothes of their smartness. Of course, they recommend a good foundation garment, but before that, if you're wondering what those things are, those little gadgets at the top, they are slimming aids. And in London it says every modern treatment for use for slimming is available, with Helena Rubinstein having just opened a luxurious slimming clinic. They don't really go together, those words, do they? Luxurious and slimming. It says many women, not really overweight, are plump in spots. I identify with that. Yes, plump in spots. And here, local reducing aids are a big help. At the top of the page is the Massette, which one that is actually, a light, flexible but effective suction cupped roller. Used faithfully, it does help to break down the fatty tissue, and you can use it anywhere. Oh, but not your tummy. That's no good anyway then, is it really? And along with these rather questionable slimming aids, there is some actually rather sensible advice on regular exercise and not eating so much starch and sugar. Before we get to the foundation garment, and the one we can see is the new low cut back for the evening, one of the new pull-on corselettes. And on this spread we're looking at a whole range of corselettes, girdles and bras, all made for different styles of dresses to shape your figure for those different dress styles. So at the beginning we have a bra and girdle especially made for a wide-necked dress, and then immediately below it says for a young lightly moulded evening or day dress. This is a corselet for creating a smooth outline, and it says a strapless or off-the-shoulder party dress needs a really glamorous foundation. Perhaps, it suggests, silhouette's pretty strapless basque for a tiny waist. And this has a front zip and padded bust cups, so it's squeezing in the waist and emphasising the bust. We have a strapless bra. And then for sports clothes, Vogue recommends a stretchy panty girdle. And all these girdles and corselettes are recommended, different ones for different figure types and for different lifestyles and for different styles of dress. So there's much more to choosing your foundation garments in the 50s than you might think. So we go on to for narrow tailored dresses and skirts, where the slimness of your back and a flat tummy are important. A light girdle, such as this one is called the tummy dipper, and it has a curve at the waist, it says, which lessens the tendency to roll over. Presumably that means flesh rolling over the top of your girdle, which I can see for myself could easily happen. And lastly, a high-waisted girdle to go with an empire line dress. And here Vogue gives all kinds of useful advice for beginner sewists, just beginning with, are you choosing the right fabric for the style of dress or garment that you're making, and with or without nap. And as it says, a word here that often causes confusion, and they just explain that the nap means that the fabric has a pile, such as velvet, where you need to make sure that it all faces in the same direction, and that you also might need to buy more fabric if this is the case. Advice on how to fit the pattern and pre-shrinking fabric before, are you washing it before cutting out, and then lastly some advice on laying out the pattern and making sure that everything is lying on the straight of grain. And just to pick out a couple of things from these advertisements, and the first is dress shields. And interestingly, to me anyway, a lot of companies or individual entrepreneurs that sell vintage dresses will also recommend and sell dress shields. And dress shields are just little kind of cotton pads that go under your armpit. And you can see why vintage dress sellers are particularly aware of this, because if you buy vintage dresses, the place they're most likely to have disintegrated, this might not surprise you if you come to think about it, is under the arms. So if you're wearing like a lovely fabric, or you've sewn fabric in vintage rayon, you would really be wise to use some cotton dress shields just on that armpit area to protect that precious fabric under the armpit. And just a little intrigued, opposite, you can see that heart and the leaf, and what they are, this is a sort of thing that you don't come across now. We're so wasteful now, aren't we? Those little things, those little zip-up pouches, are for collecting all the odd little bits of soap, and you unzip them and then you put all your bits and pieces of soap into this heart and leaf shapes, and they're some kind of spongy thing, I think, and then you can kind of use up every little bit of soap. I think that's a rather good idea. And lastly, this little editorial on feminine fripperies. Fashions this spring are the most fetching for years. The look is gentler, more feminine. Clothes are ladylike and tremendously becoming. Hats and accessories are a beauty treatment in themselves, and part of the new look. The pretty frivolities on this page, none of them expensive in time and money, all showing extravagant returns in flattery and light-heartedness. And you can see the little ideas here. Bright white touches. It says that little tie-on neckerchief with the scalloped edges, a contour belt to whittle the slimmest waist, collar cuffs, and a classic dicky would be worn in nice crisp white piqué, and lace and ruffles are romantic and glamorous for the evening. The sleeveless bolero and pleated organdy fichu are great prettifiers, and the tucked javot and cuffs are feminine, and it says delicious. Make your grandest entrance, lastly, in a beatific, or is it beautiful, cape or stole. The off-the-shoulder cape would be lovely in a jewel-coloured velvet. Thank you very much for joining me to look through the Vogue pattern catalogue of 1957. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, I'd be really grateful if you would give this video a thumbs up, and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.